"Excuse me, young," Savannah Hayes said, her voice firm, but with a tone that sounded more like an order than a suggestion. "The first class is reserved for passengers who paid for this seat." Nia Johnson blinked, stunned. He looked at the boarding pass and then to Savannah, trying to process the words. "I am a first-class passenger," said Nia, her calm but firm voice. "Here is my ticket." "There must be some mistake," Savannah replied, narrowing her eyes. "You don't belong here. If you don't meet the rules, I'll call security," Savannah said for sure, without realizing that she was making a serious mistake. The young woman she had just scolded was the daughter of the airline owner, and her prejudice would not be unpunished. The airport was vibrant, a true hive of activity. Travelers moved hastily, and the bags rolled accurately on the polished floor. The sound of the intercom mingled with the echo of the quick steps, while families laughed and prepared to embark on new adventures. In the midst of this agitation, Nia Johnson stood out, not for wanting to be seen, but for the silent confidence he carried. She held her boarding pass with the same tranquility as those who knew exactly where she belonged. A young educated, with a natural elegance, his serenity contrasting with the turbulence around him. Today was not any day for Nia. This flight represented a celebration, a milestone in your life, the achievement of a prestigious scholarship to study in the United States. With her sophisticated clothes, she walked through the first-class lounge, her boarding pass in hand. The atmosphere was a refuge of comfort. Leather chairs, soft light, jazz music in the background. Nia settled in an armchair, watching the movement around her, the phone and coffee on the table, as her gaze was fixing into her hand. It was no doubt that she felt, but an increasing anticipation. While typing a message to your father, a notification came. "Almost boarding. Let me know when you solve this." Nia smiled and answered quickly, "Yes, almost. I will send a message as soon as it is on the plane. It's all right." Nia's father, Marcus Johnson, was the owner of the airline in which she was flying. But contrary to what many could expect, he did not display his status with arrogance. On the contrary, he has always treated everyone with the same respect, from cleaning employees to high-ranking executives. This is how he educates Nia, and she always proud of it. But the trip, which should be a celebration, would soon take an unexpected course. While Nia was preparing to board, she didn't know her path would cross Savannah Hayes, the flight attendant, and her prejudice would change the course of that experience. When Nia arrived at the counter, Savannah, with a rehearsed smile, received the boarding card from each passenger with an almost mechanical look. When it was Nia's turn, however, Savannah's smile fell on a little. She examined Nia's boarding pass with an expression of doubt, her eyes briefly narrowing. "Ticket says first class," Nia said, trying to keep calm. But instead of directing her to the seat, Savannah just smiled forcibly. "Oh, the economy is back," she said, pointing to the bottom of the plane. Nia blinked, surprised, not understanding the reason for that mistake. "This pass is first class," Nia Johnson replied, extending him to Savannah Hayes to see. Savannah did not falter. "There must have been an error. Please go to the economy." His tone seemed polite but carried an undeniable edge of dismissal. Nia's hand squeezed the handle of her hand luggage, but her voice remained calm. "There is no mistake. This is my first-class seat." Passengers behind Nia began to move impatiently, the gate tension growing as the impasse increased. Savannah leaned a little further, her tone becoming lower, but no less firm. "Look, I don't want you to cause a scene. Just go to the economy so that we can go with boarding." The discomfort of the situation settled in the air, and Nia, with a firm posture and an unshakable look, kept calm, but a wave of indignation was beginning to grow inside her. "Have you been treated unfairly just because you thought you didn't belong? How would you react if you were in Nia's place? Leave your opinion in the comments below, and if you believe everyone should be treated with respect, click the application button right now. Refusing to give in, Nia advanced, her steps firm, while Savannah watched her with a mixture of frustration and unbelief. Upon entering the first-class cabin, Nia went straight to her designated seat, her body still carrying the tension of the confrontation. The inside of the cabin was impeccable, with spacious armchairs and an environment that exuded calm and sophistication. Nia adjusted her window, feeling the relief of finally being in her space, but the feeling of discomfort for Savannah's attitude didn't leave her. Moments later, Savannah entered the cabin, her impeccable posture as an experienced professional. His jump sounded on the floor with almost calculated accuracy, each step seeming to carry a message. She approached Nia, her face now hiding an expression of professional politeness, but her eyes couldn't hide frustration. "Excuse me, young," Savannah said, her tone again firm but still polite. "The first class is reserved for passengers who paid for this seat." Nia blinked, momentarily stunned. She looked at the boarding pass and then to Savannah, trying to soothe the situation. "I am a first-class passenger," she replied, her calm voice, but with a firmness that left no doubt. "Here is my ticket." She extended the pass to Savannah, waiting for the misunderstanding to be resolved quickly. But instead of accepting the ticket, Savannah crossed her arms and gave Nia a skeptical look. "I don't think so," she said with disdain. "Go away as I deal with it." My passengers in the economic line began to realize the interaction. Some exchanged feather glances, while others whispered judgments. Nia could feel the eyes on her. Each looked like a cruel reminder of the humiliation she was facing. Savannah didn't stop. She stepped forward, the clearest voice. "Let me see your ticket again. Are you sure you didn't take someone else's pass by mistake?" Nia extended her ticket once more, feeling her hands shaking. "It's mine," he answered calmly. "This is my ticket. It's not a mistake. My father bought it for me." "Your father?" Savannah raised an eyebrow. "And where is he now?" "He's waiting for me at destination." Savannah laughed a giggle, looking for validation in the surroundings, before looking again. "I will need to check this." She walked away. Nia was still, the knot of humiliation squeezing her chest. Around him, murmurs increased. Some looked with pity, others with judgment. No one intervened. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Always take on with dignity, even when others did not." Nia took a deep breath, refusing to let tears fall. She was Nia Johnson, daughter of a man who built an empire, a man who taught him that respect was something no one could take. A few minutes later, Savannah returned. "Excuse me," your voice now higher than necessary. "I need to ask you to go to the economy. This seat was attributed to someone else." Nia took the pass again without hesitation. "But this is my seat. How can you be attributed to someone else?" Savannah crossed her arms, the polite smile slipping. The commissioners approached the Nia seat, their professional but firm expressions. Nia, who calmly explained the situation, showed her boarding pass, her stable voice while defending her right to sit where she belonged. However, Savannah's narrative prevailed. "Madam," one of the police said in a low but authoritarian voice, "they asked us to accompany her to another seat." Nia found their eyes and calmly explained again. "This is my designated seat," she said, holding the departure card to see them. "I have every right to be here." The police hesitated, looking at Savannah in search of confirmation. She nodded firmly, her expression determined. "Is her seat in the economy?" Despite the protests of Nia and the valid ticket, the police gave in to Savannah's authority. They escorted Nia to the economy, while the murmurs and looks of the passengers followed it through the corridor. His composure never faltered, but the humiliation was clear. Back in the first class, Savannah walked around the cabin with a triumphant smile. She spoke aloud enough to be heard by everyone. "This is how we deal with the troublemakers," she told an onboard colleague. And looking at the passengers, he added with a smug tone, "The first class is for people who really belong here." Humiliated but composed, Nia walked to her new seat. The passengers stretched their neck to observe, their reactions mixed, some indifferent, other sympathizers, some devastated. In the first class, Savannah kept walking down the cabin with a satisfied smile on her face. "This girl doesn't even seem to be in the first class," but she was trying to claim her. "The cabin is only for those who belong here," she said, her tone full of self-sufficiency. Was Savannah right to judge Nia for the color of her skin? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you believe in justice for everyone, be sure to click the inscription button for more stories like this. As the flight continued, the cabin's silent tinnitus contrasted with the tension that hovered in the air. Nia settled in her economic seat, erect posture and compound expression. Externally, she looked calm, but inside frustration consumed her. He looked at his cell phone, where the text was still sent to his father. "This is not right, father. Why didn't they believe me?" She hesitated before sending, knowing that he would act immediately and probably very directly. Nia was calm, but it wasn't easy. She could feel the weight of Savannah's eyes and judgments. Each one reminds her that she was not welcome in that space. It was not just the embarrassment of being questioned. It was the underlying message that it did not belong, that it was not enough. But Nia was not about to leave this to consume. She took a deep breath. Even when passenger murmurs became higher, when the eyes became harder to ignore, she kept her head up. Inside, the weight of humiliation hurt her, but she didn't let it transparent. In the first class, a flight attendant on board questioned Savannah about her actions, and Savannah responded with a smug tone, high enough to be heard. She thought she could simply come in and demand whatever she wanted, Savannah said with disdain. But you need experience to deal with this kind of nonsense, and I had to put it where it really belongs. Some passengers gave nervous laughs. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances, realizing that Savannah's comments were everything but professional. Sitting in the economy, Nia maintained the composure, despite the humiliation she had just suffered. His first-class ticket, which validated his place, now looked like a cruel joke. She pulled the phone, her fingers shaking a little while typing a message to her father. "Father, they moved me to the economy. The flight attendant said my seat was a mistake." Marcus Johnson's response arrived quickly, straightforward but full of confidence. "Stay calm. I will deal with it. Let me know if something happens." Nia looked at the screen for a moment, feeling the strength in her father's support. She took a deep breath, put the phone in her bag and waited, trusting that his intervention would arrive at the right time. Sometime later, Nia got up to stretch her legs and went to the bathroom in the back of the plane. While waiting, he heard a soft voice behind him. "I saw what happened before." Nia turned and found an older woman in the first class. His eyes were full of worry, and his voice, soft, carried empathy. "This was not right. You didn't deserve to be treated like that. If there is something I can do to help, let me know." For a moment, Nia was surprised by the woman's kindness. A small smile appeared on his face. "Thanks, I appreciate, but I'll be fine." The woman nodded, placing a soft hand on Nia's arm. Savannah Hayes' expression was unreadable, her polished outside still intact, but there was an unmistakable advantage in her movements. She stopped abruptly in Nia's line, her sharp and heat-devoid voice as she asked, "Yes?" Nia looked at her, finding her gaze with a silent education. "Can I have a glass of water, please?" she asked, her tone measured and calm. Savannah's answer was immediate, but short. She offered a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course," said Savannah, the sharp voice before turning quickly over her heels and leaving without another word. Nia observed her figure moving away, her calm but questioning expression. She looked at the clock. A few minutes passed, then 10. Still, no water has arrived. Nia's eyes followed Savannah as she moved through the first-class booth. He saw the commissioner serving drinks carefully to other passengers, offering them their smile practiced, and getting involved in light conversations. Savannah's gestures seemed almost exaggerated, as if she wanted to show her efficiency and attention. But all the time, she completely avoided the section of Nia. The deliberate nature did not go unnoticed by it. She pressed the call button again, her patience starting to wear out. This time the Carlilian's soft sound seemed louder in his ears, almost mockery, highlighting his growing frustration. Savannah finally returned to the economy section, her slower, almost reluctant movement. She approached Nia's line, her expression now tinged with something like annoyance. "Yes?" she asked again, her tone clear enough to get some passengers nearby to look at. Nia kept her voice calm, although she demanded an effort. "I requested water earlier," she said. "Can I get it now?" For a moment, Savannah said nothing. Then his smile with his closed mouth came back, a deliberate gesture and instinction. "I'll get to that," she said, her voice dripping with indifference. Without giving Nia a chance to answer, he disappeared back to the first class. Nia's calm facade began to crack. The deliberate hostility of the situation was unmistakable now. She felt the bite of humiliation settle deeper into her chest as she looked around. Did anyone notice what was going on? Were they ignoring this? Or was she really alone in that? His eyes fell to the phone, the screen still shining with his father's previous message. "Stay calm. I will deal with it. Let me know if something happens." She hit the screen and started typing, her fingers moving silently, urgently. Dad, the flight attendant is aiming at me. She is deliberately ignoring my requests and making me feel undesirable. It is becoming unbearable. Nia looked at the words for a brief moment before pressing the sending, the purpose of her action bringing relief and frustration. Your father's answer came almost immediately, as it always happened. Stay where you are. I'm making the call now. The answer was short but weighing. Nia knew her father wasn't to let things slide. If he said he was making the call, he wanted to say business. She took a deep breath, trying to firm again. As the plane cut the clouds up, the calm cockpit buzz was interrupted by the sound of the secure line playing. The captain, an experienced professional, took the receiver. His expression was neutral at first, his eyes examining the instruments by habit. But when the voice of the other end spoke, his behavior changed. The eyebrows frowned and his posture straightened. The voice belonged to Marcus Johnson, the father of Nia, a man known for his authority and influence. Despite the calm and measured tone, there was no way to confuse the strength behind his words. Marcus's instructions were clear and deliberate, leaving no room for interpretation. "Yes, sir," the captain answered, his voice stable but now urgently carried. Understanding. The conversation was brief, no more than a minute, but her impact lasted much after the call ended. When the captain put the receiver back on his support, he slowly exhaled. He knew that when someone like Marcus Johnson made a call during the flight, it was not a casual investigation. It was a direct intervention. After a moment of silence, the captain activated the intercom, calling the flight attendant. Savannah Hayes, still in the first-class cabin, was in the middle of an arrogant conversation with her colleague when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Startled, she turned to find the captain standing behind her. His expression was serious, his rigid stance. "Miss Hayes," said the captain, his tone firm but controlled, "I need to talk to you." Savannah straightened her posture, trying to keep the air of trust. "Of course," she replied, her voice harsh than usual. "What is the problem?" The captain wasted no time. "I just got a call from Marcus Johnson," he began, pausing. He was informed about an incident involving his daughter on the plane. With Nia's mention, Savannah's face paled, and the confidence she had begun to show off quickly broke. The pieces began to fit, so the realization hit it as a cold wave. His carefully built narrative on the handling of troublemakers felt suddenly fragile and inadequate. The captain continued, his voice carrying an air of purpose. "Mr. Johnson instructed me to inform that he will be finding the plane personally when landing. He expects an explanation, and from now on, he wants you to take good care of her and treat her in the best way possible." For a moment, Savannah was frozen, her mind running. The color drained from the face as the weight of the fully registered situation. "I didn't realize," she stammered, her usual sharpness replaced by hesitation. The captain's expression has not changed. "This is irrelevant," he said. "What matters is how the situation was treated." Savannah's usual bravado cracked under the pressure. She nodded rigidly, her throat dried while she managed to say, "Understood." When the captain turned and returned to the cockpit, Savannah remained rooted in place. The confidence she displayed so much over the flight was now a distant memory. She murmured softly, almost as if she tried to reassure herself, "I'm sure it's nothing." But his words were lacking in conviction. The discomfort brushed to her, getting stronger with every minute that passed. For the rest of the flight, Savannah's behavior was visibly subdued. His steps, once fast and purposeful, were slower and more hesitant. The smug comments that had fluid so freely before were absent, replaced by tense silence. Passengers who observed their previous behavior could not fail to notice the change. The whispers rippled through the cabin, their shades that varied from curiosity to silent satisfaction. The moments after the captain's words were nothing but distressing. The revelation that Nia Johnson was the daughter of Marcus Johnson, the airline owner, destroyed the confidence of Savannah Hayes. Every step she took on the cabin seemed heavier. His behavior, once fast and safe from himself, was replaced by a nervous hesitation. The captain's words that Marcus Johnson would be waiting for the plane personally when landed echoed relentlessly in his mind as a warning bell that she could not silence. Savannah tried to continue her duties. She took a tray to offer refreshments, her hands shaking slightly as she approached a first-class passenger. She forced herself to smile, but her voice hesitated. "Would you like a drink?" she asked, barely finding her gaze. The passenger frowned, confused by the sudden change in Savannah's tone, but accepted the drink without comments. His colleagues, accustomed to his assertiveness, now exchanged curious glances. Savannah's usual risk had dissipated, replaced by visible discomfort. Her hands hindered as she collected the empty glasses, and she avoided making eye contact with the passengers. Whispers began to circulate between the crew and the nearby passengers. "What happened to her?" one colleague asked another. "Looks like she saw a ghost." But Savannah's distraction was not merely internal. The fight was beginning to infiltrate his work. She poorly interpreted the passengers' requests, served wrong items, and forgot the request she had just made. The passengers noticed their repeated trips to the kitchen, where it took more than necessary, his hands holding the counters as if he tried to establish herself. The confidence she exhaled had completely disappeared. Finally, Savannah reached a break. She looked at the economy, where Nia Johnson was sitting, his composure still intact. Despite everything that had happened, Nia was sailing on her phone, a slight smile of knowledge on her lips. Savannah felt her stomach tighten. She couldn't stand Marcus Johnson's idea, boarding the plane and directing her straight without even trying to fix things. Swallowing his pride, Savannah took a tray and headed toward Nia's seat. Her heart beat hard as she approached each step, feeling as if she was being tested. Stopping beside Nia, she cleaned her throat, clumsy. "Miss Johnson," she began, her atypically soft voice. Savannah Hayes hesitated, the forced smile on her face slightly slipping as she spoke. "Can I bring you something? A drink? A snack, maybe? Or even a hot towel?" Nia Johnson looked up, her neutral expression, but her sharp eyes indicated that she was aware of the situation. "No, thank you," she said politely, her calm but distant tone. Savannah hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of rejection, but was not ready to give up. "Are you sure? If you change your mind, please let me know." Nia shook her head, her firm and sharp answer. "I am fine." The rejection hurt, but Savannah was not ready to accept defeat. In the next few hours, she made repeated trips to Nia's row, offering everything she could imagine: extra blankets, premium snacks, even a meal upgrade. Each time Nia refused, her answers were invariably educated but firm. The other passengers observed the interaction with growing curiosity. Whispers began to circulate through the cabin, while people wondered what had motivated Savannah's sudden behavior change. "She's never like that," an attentive passenger murmured to her mate. "Something must have happened," said another, shaking his head. "I never saw her like this. She is practically falling on herself." Nia, however, was not surprised. She knew that the change in Savannah's attitude was not genuine remorse, but fear. Each time Savannah approached, she received her with the same compound smile, silently remembering the flight attendant that her attempts to undo the damage were futile. Eventually, Savannah abandoned the tray and approached Nia, now empty hands. His expression was tense, his usual air of authority replaced by a desperate need to solve the situation. She crouched slightly, lowering herself at Nia's eye level. "Miss Johnson," she started, her voice shaking slightly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry early. It was a misunderstanding of me. I did not realize." She stopped, not knowing how to continue the sentence without incriminating even more. "I hope we can leave it behind." Nia studied her for a moment, keeping her posture calm and unshakable. So, with committed words, he replied, "The subject is no longer in my hands." Savannah blinked, confused. "What do you mean by that?" "My father is dealing with it now," Nia replied, her tone firm but without haste. "He's the one who will decide whether or not you are forgiven." Savannah's face collapsed. Her previous composure was completely broken, and she opened her mouth to answer, but no word came out. The weight of Nia's statement bumped into the air without leaving room for negotiation. For the first time, Savannah understood the seriousness of her actions and that the consequences were totally out of her control. Nia turned her attention to the phone, signaling that the conversation was over. Savannah stayed there for another moment, her thoughts running before back to the kitchen. The other passengers, who were watching the exchange carefully, began to whisper with each other, their curiosity and speculation growing. But for Nia, The situation was clear. She had supported humiliation and hostility, but the balance of power had changed. When he looked out the window, a slight smile crossed his lips. As the plane landed gently on the track, the passengers began to collect their belongings, preparing to disembark. However, many noticed an unusual activity outside. Through the windows, they saw a black and elegant SUV to stop well beside the aircraft, its polished surface shining under the airport light. The vehicle door opened, and Marcus Johnson, the owner of the airline, left with an imposing presence. He was accompanied by two senior executives, making it clear that this was not an ordinary visit. Inside the plane, the whispers began almost immediately. "Who's that?" a passenger asked, poking his seat from the seat. "He looks important," another murmured, widening his eyes. "This is Marcus Johnson. He is the owner of the company." "What is he doing here?" Marcus climbed the stairs to the aircraft with a definite purpose. His expression was calm but serious, and when he entered the cabin, the atmosphere changed instantly. The muffled conversation ceased, and all eyes turned to him. He scanned the cabin, and then his eyes landed in Nia Johnson, who was sitting in the economy class. His expression softened momentarily, and he walked straight to her. When he reached her, he crouched slightly to find Nia's eye level. His warm, kind voice broke the silence. "Are you well?" he asked, the evident concern in his tone. Nia looked at him for a moment, his compound outdoor betraying a flash of relief. "I'm okay," she answered, although her tone still carried traces of persistent frustration. "It's just too much." Marcus put a comforting hand on his shoulder. "It's over now," he said softly. "You won't have to deal with it anymore." His expression of care suddenly changed, and the heat he reserved for his daughter disappeared, replaced by a calm but firm authority. He turned his attention to Savannah Hayes, who was frozen in front of the cabin. His face was pale, and the usual trust was gone. The perception that Marcus Johnson had come for her was stamped on her face. "Miss Hayes," Marcus started, his calm but relentless voice. "There was a problem with my daughter's seat." Savannah was speechless for a moment before stuttering, I didn't know she was your daughter, sir. It was a misunderstanding." Marcus did not give in. His fixed gaze and the following words echoed firmly. "The question is not if you knew. The question is, as my daughter and other passengers dealt with without considering her circumstances." Savannah's face blushed with shame, and she tried to explain, but failed. Marcus raised his hand, interrupting his defense. "Your behavior was unacceptable. This company is based on respect and dignity. His actions failed with these values," he said, turning to all the passengers they watched. The applause began. The passengers supported Marcus and his decision. Savannah, in turn, seemed mortified, with tremendous hands and red face. He tried to speak, but there was no chance. "Miss Hayes," Marcus ordered, "you are removed from the service. Their acts do not match the standards of this company." One of the executives approached, and Savannah was escorted out of the plane, his evident humiliation. The cabin murmured about the justice of the situation. Nia, watching everything, felt a mixture of relief and vindication. Her father by her side comforted her with a firm look. "Are you well?" he asked, worried. "I'm fine now," Nia replied, stronger than before. "Thank you, Dad." Marcus smiled softly. "That's what I'm here for," he said. The bond between father and daughter was strengthened, with justice being done before everyone on the flight. After the incident, the passengers continued to mutter on the situation, throwing respect for Nia Johnson. Nas semanas seguintes, Marcus Johnson, comprometido com os valores de sua companhia aérea, iniciou uma revisão completa dos programas de treinamento, com ênfase em diversidade, inclusão e respeito. Ele trabalhou pessoalmente para garantir que nenhum passageiro enfrentasse o tratamento que Nia sofreu. Os funcionários passaram a participar de workshops obrigatórios, desafiando-os a refletir sobre seus preconceitos e a tratar todos com dignidade. Enquanto isso, Savannah Hayes foi demitida, afastando-se da companhia para refletir sobre suas ações. Ela sentiu vergonha e arrependimento e, após um período de introspecção, escreveu um e-mail sincero se desculpando. Marcus Johnson viu sinceridade em suas palavras e, após discutir com sua equipe, decidiu dar a ela uma segunda chance sob termos estritos. Savannah voltou com a responsabilidade de provar sua mudança, se dedicando ao treinamento e à transformação pessoal. Com o tempo, ela se tornou uma comissária de bordo que garantiu que todos os passageiros se sentissem valorizados. Marcus Johnson, por sua vez, usou o incidente para fazer um discurso público, destacando que comportamento respeitoso e inclusivo não era opcional. Suas palavras repercutiram amplamente nas redes sociais, gerando discussões sobre preconceito e responsabilidade. Nia Johnson, refletindo sobre o ocorrido, reconheceu o impacto da experiência. Embora dolorosa, foi fortalecedora. Ela também viu a mudança concreta que ocorreu na companhia aérea, com novos programas e transformações, incluindo a de Savannah Hayes. Semanas depois, Nia Johnson e Marcus Johnson estavam em outro voo, sentados lado a lado, observando a tripulação trabalhar de forma respeitosa e profissional. Ao receber uma bebida de uma das aeromoças, Nia retribuiu o gesto, olhando para o pai com um sorriso tranquilo. A mudança era visível não apenas na tripulação, mas nela mesma, mais forte e mais segura do que nunca. If you liked this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Here you will find exciting stories every day, made to touch the heart, and I'm sure the story that is appearing on the screen now will thrill you too. Don't miss it.